Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about the 13th paragraph of Nana. Last time we talked about uh, the 12th paragraph, and Bhagavan concluded that by saying that Bhagavan gave us an assurance that just like what's been caught in the jaws of the tiger will not escape, so those who've been caught in the look of Guru's grace will never be forsaken, but will surely be saved by him. But then he adds a very important caveat. Eninum Guru Kartiya Varipadi Tavarada Nadakavendam. Nevertheless, it is necessary to walk unfailingly in accordance with the path that Guru has shown. So what is the path that Bhagavan has shown us? If we want to say it in one word, subsidence. Bhagavan's path is all about subsidence. And this he makes clear in the final paragraph of Nana, in which he says, Ta nerandal sakalum erum. If oneself rises, everything rises or appears. Tan adanginal sakalum adangam. If oneself subsides, everything subsides. And then a very important sentence, which is not very easy to translate into English because there's no quite adequate equivalent words in English, but basically what the next sentence means, right? The sentence is Evlo kevlo tandu nad keromo, avlo kavlo namayundu. That means to whatever extent sinking low or subsiding or being humble, to whatever extent sinking low we behave or conduct ourselves, to that extent there is goodness. In other words, it's good to the extent we subside, that is good. And then he concludes by saying, Manate adiki kondirandal enge irandalam irakalam. If one is continuously restraining or curbing or subduing the mind, that is, if we're causing the mind to subside, wherever one may be, one can be. So Bhagavan's path is all about subsidence. That is, the more we subside, the better it is for us and for everyone. So the path shown by Bhagavan, we can say in one word, is a path of subsidence. However, as he makes clear, for example, in verse 13 of Upadesha Undiyar, the subsidence or dissolution of mind is of two kinds. That is complete subsidence or complete dissolution. It is two kinds, laya and nasa. What has subsided in nasa, what has subsided in laya or dissolved in laya will rise again. But if its form dies, that means if it dissolves in nasa, it will not rise again. Laya means temporary dissolution or subsidence of mind. Nasa means a permanent dissolution. The word that he uses for subsidence is odicum. Odicum, in this context, it means complete subsidence. In other words, dissolution of the mind. But sleep is, for example, a state of laya. The mind is completely subsided, completely dissolved in sleep, but it rises again. So laya is not a solution to our problem. So Bhagavan wants us to subside in such a way that we never rise again. So to bring about such a subsidence, he said there are two paths, two means. But he also made clear that those two means are actually one and the same. There are two ways of viewing the same thing. That is, those two means are self-investigation and self-surrender. Self-surrender, very obviously, it means subsidence. That the more we subside, The more we surrender, the more we are subsided. The more we subside, the more we are surrendered. So, yielding ourselves to the will of God, or to Bhagavan's will, that is how the subsidence begins. And ultimately, we need to give ourselves completely. We need to subside entirely back into our source. That is the path of surrender. But how to bring about that surrender? According to Bhagavan, the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by grasping form. That is, even to say, we can't exactly say we rise by grasping form, or we can't say we come into existence by grasping form, because we must come into existence in order to grasp form. But as soon as we grasp form, as we come into existence, we grasp form. This is what Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Ulladu Narpadu. Urupatri undam, grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatri nikkam, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mika ongam, grasping and feeding on form, it flourishes abundantly. Uru victu urupatram, leaving form, it grasps form. When we let go of one form, we grasp another form. Tedinal otum pidicum, if sought, it takes flight. That is, because the nature of ego is always to be grasping form. And as Bhagavan says in the last line of that verse, he describes ego as Uruvatrapeya Hande, the formless phantom ego. It's formless because it's got no form of its own. So whatever forms it grasps are things other than itself. So all phenomena, all objects, or everything other than ourselves is a form. That is, anything that is distinct from any other thing is a form. That is, there are gross forms, obviously, the physical form, but there are also subtle forms. There's form of thoughts, feelings, emotions, all these are desires, all these, they're all subtle forms. Any phenomenon, anything that can be distinguished from any other thing is a form of, whether gross or subtle, or however gross or subtle, it is still a form. So attending to anything other than ourselves nourishes and sustains ego. That is, ego lives by grasping form. So in order to subside, we need to let go of everything. Letting go is what is called surrender. But how to let go of everything else? Bhagavan has given us a very simple means to let go of everything else. That is, since the very nature of ego is grasping, instead of grasping forms, anything other than ourselves, we should try and grasp ourselves. And if we try and grasp ourselves, that is, if we try to attend only to ourselves, the nature of ego is to subside. That's why he says in that verse, Tedinal otum pidicum, if sought, it takes flight. So to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we are thereby letting go of other things and subsiding, and consequently subsiding. So this is why in order to surrender ourselves, we need to investigate ourselves. We need to hold on to ourselves, because if we're not holding on to ourselves, we'll be holding on to something else. And so long as we're holding on to anything other than ourselves, we are not surrendering. This is made clear by Bhagavan in this 13th paragraph. He begins the 13th paragraph with a very simple but very profound definition of what is surrender. To explain this sentence, it's easy. It's best to break it up into it's two clauses. There's a main clause and an adverbial clause. And so if we first consider the main clause and then the adverbial clause, then the whole meaning will be clear. What he says in the main clause is Atmanishta Paranai Iripadai Tannai Isanuku Alipadam. Atma means oneself. Nishta means firmness or steadiness or abidance. So Atmanishta implies being ourself. In other words, being what we actually are. Atmanishta Paran is one who is established as oneself. So Atmanishta Paran means one who's firmly fixed as oneself, one who's firmly who abides as oneself, who remains as oneself. Abidance means just being. So being ourself is Atmanishta. And being one who is being oneself is Atmanishta Paran. So he says, being Atmanishta Paran, and he puts an emphasis on the Irupade. Irupadu means being. Irupade means only being. So he's stressing that. Only being as Atmanishta Paran, Tanne Isanaku Alipadam, is giving oneself to God. Tanne means oneself. Isanaku means to God. And Alipadu is giving. Means is. So that being Atmanishta Paran alone is giving ourselves to God. So, as I say, Atmanishta Paran means being what we actually are, being as we actually are. So how to be as we actually are? He indicates that in the adverbial clause, which precedes this main clause. In the what he says in the adverbial clause is Anman Chintane Tavira, Vera Chintane Kalambavadaku, Satram Idum Kadamo. What that means is not Idum Kadama means not giving room. Satram Idum Kadama means not even giving the slightest room, the least room. Kalambavadaku means for the rising or to a rising of Vera Chintane Kalamatu, any other thought, not giving room to the rising of any other thought. When he says other thought, other than what? Any other thought except Atmachintana. Atmachintana literally means thought of oneself. It implies meditation on our self-contemplation or self-attentiveness. So the implication of this adverbial clause is we need to attend to ourselves so keenly that we thereby give no room to arising of any other thought. Because thoughts can arise only if we attend to them, because they arise only in our awareness. If we don't attend to them, they cannot rise. So if we attend to ourselves so keenly, but we don't allow our attention to slip away towards anything else, we are thereby giving no room for the rising of any other thought. So attending to ourselves so keenly that we don't give rise to anything other than ourselves, that is the way to be as Atmanishta Paran, to be firmly established as ourselves. Because that is the Atmachintana, which, as I say, implies self-attentiveness. Atmachintana is the knowing or chit aspect. Atmanishta is the sat or being aspect. We can, and as Bhagavan says, for example, in verse 26 of Upadesha Undiyar, Tanai iritale tanne aridlam. Being oneself alone is knowing oneself, because sat and chit, being and knowing, are one and the same thing. So in order to be as we actually are, we need to attend to ourself alone. So long as we're attending to anything else, we are rising as ego, because it is attending to other things means we're grasping form. And by grasping form, ego, we are feeding and nourishing the rising of ego. Sorry, there was something occurred to me there, and it just slipped my mind what I was going to say about that. Sorry, no, it's gone. It may come back. So in this sentence, Bhagavan has summarized his path. That is, as I say, Bhagavan's path is a path of subsidence. Subsidence means we need to let go of everything else and just be as we actually are. And in order to be as we actually are, we need to attend to ourselves. And this alone is truly giving ourselves to God. This alone is surrender. So Bhagavan makes it very clear in this sentence that it is only by means of self-attentiveness that we can give ourselves completely to God. Only by being self-attentive can we truly subside, and that subsidence is giving ourselves to God. Because what is God? God is nothing but our own real nature. God is what we actually are. But when we rise as ego, we seem to be something separate from God. Because when we rise as ego, we take ourselves to be a person, a body consisting of 5 sheaths. And of course, this person that we seem to be is limited in so many ways. It's limited in space. We're only occupying a few feet or meters of space. We're limited in time. We only occupy our life lasts a few years, and we come one day and we go another day, and that's our life. So our life is limited in space. Our existence of this body is limited in space. It's limited in time, and it's also limited in being something separate from all other things. I am this, not that. I am this body. I'm not this PC in front of me. I'm not this table on which I'm leaning. So we separate ourselves by rising as ego. So God seems to be something separate from ourselves so long as we rise as ego. But what God actually is, God is our own real nature. He is the source. He's the true substance. He's what we actually are, and he's our source. He's both the source and substance of ourselves. So he is what we actually are, and he's the source from which we've risen. So in order to give ourselves to him, we need to subside. And in order to subside, we need to be keenly self-attentive, because to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, to that extent do we subside. So this sentence is an extremely important part of Bhagavan's teachings. That is, in this sentence, Bhagavan has summarized the practical implication of all his teachings. He's pointed out to us how self-investigation and self-surrender are one and the same. We cannot surrender ourselves completely without attending to ourselves. Because if we're not attending to ourselves, we're attending to something else. Or if we don't attend either to ourselves or to anything else, we just subside in there. We fall asleep or whatever. So the only way to subside in such a way that we will never rise again is to be keenly self-attentive. As Bhagavan indicates in this sentence very beautifully, the very first word of the sentence, Anma Chintane, means self-attentiveness. And he concludes by saying, Tannai Isana Kurali Padam. That is giving ourselves to God. So, in other words, the sum and substance of this sentence is being self-attentive is giving ourselves to God. To the extent to which we attend to ourselves, to that extent we are giving ourselves to God. To the extent to which we attend to anything other than ourselves, we are holding on to our separate existence. Because so long as we are attending to anything other than ourselves, we are feeding and nourishing our existence as ego. So if we want to surrender this ego, if we want to give up this ego, we need to stop attending to anything else and attend only to ourselves. That is the meaning of this sentence. So this is such an important sentence. And if we attend to ourselves keenly enough, we are thereby not don't give room for any other thoughts to arise. When hearing this sentence, many of us may object. Okay, this is all very well. I can do this for a short time every day, but I've got so many responsibilities. I've got so many things I need to think about. I've got a job I need to do. I've got a family I need to take care of, and this and that. We feel we have so many responsibilities, and we have to do so many things to fulfill our responsibilities. But here is Bhagavan saying that if we want to give ourselves to God, we need to be so keenly self-attentive we don't think of anything whatsoever. But if I don't think of anything, how can I take care of my family? How can I do my work? How can I do this or that? So many objections may rise in our mind. Bhagavan answers all those objections in the rest of this paragraph. That is, in this first sentence, Bhagavan says, if we want to surrender ourselves completely to God, we need to be so keenly self-attentive that we don't give room to the rising of any other thoughts. And the rest of this paragraph, he's explaining to us why we need not think of anything, why it's not necessary for us to think of anything. In the next sentence, to answer this question, but it may naturally arise in our mind, but I've got so many important things to think about. Bhagavan says, Isan peril evelo bharate patalum avalavayum avavahitu kol kira. That means even though one places whatever amount of burden upon God, that entire amount he will bear. That is, the implication in this context is even the burden of thinking we can leave to him. All our cares, our concerns, our responsibilities, our family, our job, or whatever else we think, we can leave it all to him. He will bear it all. In this context, I would like to talk about a very, very beautiful and important verse in Arunachala Patikam. That in verse 9 of Arunachala Patikam, it is such a beautiful prayer Bhagavan sings, and it is so. I think anyone who is serious about following this path will feel that Bhagavan has written this verse just for them. That is what he says in this verse is. In the first line, he says, Paramanim padum patrarapatrum paravari variyaril paraman. This is a sentence in which Bhagavan is saying that he is supreme. But what is he supreme? In what sense is he supreme? That is, he addresses Arunachala as Parama. So he's addressing Arunachala as supreme. And then he says, I am supreme. In what sense is he supreme? I am supreme. Para ari variyil. I'm supreme among those who are destitute of the supreme wisdom. Nimpadum patrara patrum. The supreme wisdom to cling without attachment to your feet. So the meaning of this sentence, Bhagavan, as I say, he addresses Arunachala as supreme, and he says, I am supreme among those who are destitute of the supreme wisdom to cling without attachment to your feet. So when this word variyal means to be impoverished or a destitute person. So what is the true poverty? The true poverty is the poverty of not having that supreme wisdom to cling without attachment to his feet. That means when he says without attachment, that means without attachment to anything else. There's only one thing we should be attached to. There is a beautiful verse in Tirukkural in which Tiruvallava says, to be free of attachment, attach yourself to he who is free of attachment, or be attached to he who is free of attachment in order to free yourself of attachment. I don't have a verse here, but it's the same word Tiruvallava is using there. Patru. Patru means attachment. This is the same. Patru is both a verb and a noun. The verb form of patru is the verb that Bhagavan uses in verse 25 of Ulunapti, which I spoke about earlier, when he speaks about grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms. leaving formic grasp form, the word he uses there for grasp is patru. So patru means clinging or grasping or holding on. It also means attachment, because if we hold on to anything other than ourselves, that is attachment. So if we want to be free of attachment to all other things, we need to be attached to he who is free of attachment. Who is free of attachment? Only Arunachala Ramana is free of attachment. So this is a very, very beautiful, I mean, the whole of this verse is beautiful, but that's such a beautiful first line, because I'm sure any true devotee will feel like this. We will feel we are the worst of the worst. We are the most unqualified. Why Bhagavan has brought us to his feet and vowed to save us when we are so unworthy, he alone knows, because we don't have that supreme wisdom to cling without attachment to his feet. So we are totally unworthy of his grace. Some people say, I mean, there's a common belief that if you do lots of punya, eventually the guru will come into your life. But what punya can we have done to get Bhagavan in our life? His grace is priceless. We can't value his grace, and it is beyond all value. So how can punya means good karmas? How can any amount of good karma, how can his grace be the fruit of any amount of good karma? His grace is something far greater than the value of any amount of punya. So it's not because of our punya. It's in spite of all our lack of qualification and lack of worthiness. In spite of all of that, he's brought us to his feet. But even after he's brought us to his feet, we are still lacking that supreme wisdom to cling without attachment to his feet. So that's what he says in the first line. Then in the next line, he says, Baramunak kena then paniyarak paniyai. That means taking, or it means, literally what it means is burden as yours, en pani ara paniyai. May you order or make me my activity cease. The implication there is taking the burden, taking my burden, or taking we can take burden here means the burden of the responsibility for saving you. I lack the wisdom, the supreme wisdom, to cling without attachment to your feet. So it's up to you to take on even this burden of saving me, because I'm not doing anything to save myself. So all I can do is to beg you to take on this burden, even the burden of saving me. I give that burden to you. So may you take my burden as yours, and may you order all my activity to cease, or may you cause all my activity to cease. In other words, may you put an end to all my activity. In other words, all but my rising as ego and engaging in endless mental activity. May you cause all of these to cease. Taking all my burden as yours, may you make all these cease. So even the burden of saving, even how can we do any spiritual sadhana? How can we either surrender ourselves or investigate ourselves without his grace? That is, only he can make us do these things. The nature of ourself as ego is to be constantly grasping things other than ourselves. So if at all we have even the slightest inclination to try to turn within and to cling to ourself alone, that inclination, that love, comes only from him. So ultimately, it is all done only by him. But as Bhagavan said in the final sentence of the previous paragraph, the 12th paragraph of Nana, it is nevertheless, it's necessary for us to follow without fail the path the Guru has shown. That is, we should at least be willing to, he will make us turn our attention within if we allow him to. But if we keep on allowing, sending our attention outwards, trying to grasp this and that, we are obstructing the work of his grace. So we have to play our little part. We have to at least refrain from obstructing the work of his grace. And how do we refrain from obstructing the work of his grace? Only by doing our best to cling to self-attentiveness. We may feel ourselves completely incapable of doing so because our Vishaya vasanas are so strong and our attention keeps on going outwards. But we have to, he is there to help us, but we have to do our little bit. We have to at least allow him to turn our attention within. So that willingness on our part is there. So that's the implication of this sentence. Taking all my burden as yours, taking the entire burden of responsibility for saving me as yours, may you make me, make all my activity cease. And then in the next sentence, he says, it's a rhetorical question. Baretidum unaku edubarum. What that literally means, for you who bear, what is a burden? So you who bear implies you who bear the entire burden of the world. You who bear all burdens. And bear here also means to carry or support. So Bhagavan is the ultimate support, the adhisthana, the adhara, the basis on which everything appears. So he is carrying everything. So for him, what can be a burden? So it was particularly in connection with this sentence that I wanted to connect it with what he says in this second sentence of the 13th paragraph, in which he says, even though one places whatever amount of burden upon God, that entire amount he will bear. This is clarified by this sentence, in which he implies that since you are bearing all the burden, you means Arunachala, since you are bearing all the burden of the entire universe, what can be a burden for you? So, as I say, this is a rhetorical question. Obviously, the meaning is that he can bear any amount of burden. So that's why Bhagavan says in the second sentence of this 13th paragraph, even though one places whatever amount of burden upon God, that entire amount he will bear. So we don't have to worry. We don't have to concern ourselves about anything. We don't have to concern ourselves about our responsibilities, our family, our work, everything. We can leave the entire burden to him. He will bear it all. When he has taken on the burden of saving us, can he not look after all these trivial worldly needs that we seem to have, or worldly responsibilities that we seem to have? Then in the next sentence, he says, Paramanippirandiv ulihine talail patriyam petridu podum. Again, here, as he did in the first sentence, here he again addresses Arunachala as Parama, as supreme. And he says, he says, Nin Pirindu means separating from you. Ulehine talayil patri, grasping this world on my head, in other words, holding this world on my head, yam petridu podum. What I have got by this is enough. So the meaning of the whole sentence is, supreme, what I have got by separating from you and grasping this world on my head is enough. I've had enough of this. Why? For so many countless lives, I've been carrying the burden of the world on my head as if everything depended upon me, as if my livelihood depended upon me, as if my family depended upon me, as if my job depended upon me, as if all my responsibilities depended upon me. This is the foolish way in which I've been living for countless numbers of Janmas, of lives. I've had enough of this. The trouble this has caused me is enough. So you take the burden. Let me not carry this. Why should I be concerned about this world? You are the one who carries the entire burden of this world. So you know how to take care of this world much better than I do. You know how to take care of me much better than I do. You know how to take care of my family, of my job, of all my responsibilities. You can do it much better than I can do. So why should I foolishly be carrying all these things on my head instead of surrendering completely to you is the implication. So what I've got by separating from you and grasping this world on my head is enough. When he says separating from you, this is a very important clue. As soon as we rise, how do we separate from him? Only by rising as ego. So as soon as we rise by ego and look outwards, we're taking on the entire burden of the world on our head. And so long as we continue attending to anything other than ourselves, we're continuing to carry that burden on our head. So what is the means to give up this burden? Instead of separating from him, we need to return to him. In other words, we need to cling firmly to his feet, cling without attachment. We need to have that supreme wisdom to cling without attachment to his feet. That is the only way to let go of this burden of the world that we've been carrying on our head for so long. And then he ends in the final sentence of this verse, he says, Paramana Arunachala ene ini un padatitil ninju oduku ura parel. That means Arunachala, who are supreme, do not see or wish me henceforth to be separate from your feet. That is, all this trouble I face is only because I've separated myself from you. Do not tolerate this anymore. Do not allow me to continue to be separate from your feet. I'm unwilling to surrender myself to you, but at least by your infinite grace, you make me surrender to you, because if you don't make me surrender to you, I'm lost. There's no way I can be saved unless you force me to surrender to you, to cling to your feet, to cling without attachment to your feet. So this verse is so closely connected with what Bhagavan is teaching us in this 13th paragraph of Nana. So coming back to this 13th paragraph, as I say, in the first sentence he says, if we want to surrender to God, we need to be so keenly self-attentive that we don't give room to the rising of any other thoughts. And we need not worry about not giving room to the rising of any thoughts, because he's carrying all the burden. So if we leave the entire burden upon him, he will bear all of it. Even though one places whatever amount of burden upon God, that entire amount he will bear. So that assurance Bhagavan gives us in this second sentence. This is a very, very great assurance. And he goes on in the same theme in the next sentence. The next sentence is also an extremely important sentence. What he says in the next sentence, in the first clause of the next sentence, he says, Sakala Karingalayum Oru Parameshwara Shakti Naditi Kondirika Padiyal. That means, since one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, Parameshwara Shakti, Ishwara can mean God. It also means ruling. So Parameshwara Shakti can mean the supreme ruling power, or the power of Parameshwara, the supreme ruler. Whichever way we take it, it's the same. It means the power of God. So since that one power of God, in other words, God's grace, is driving all karyas. What does he mean here by karyas? Karyas in this context means whatever needs to happen or ought to happen. Whatever needs to be done or ought to be done, he is driving it all. That is, whatever is meant to happen in our life, whatever we are meant to experience, that's all according to prarabdha. That is, he is driving this. He's causing this prarabdha to unfold. The prarabdha, of course, is the fruit of our past actions, but it's the fruit that he's selected for us to experience in this life, and he is making us undergo that. So he is driving all karyas. that everything that needs to happen or ought to happen, he's making it happen. Not only that, the things that need to be done by our body, speech, and mind in order for that is when we live our life, we are not just sitting in a chair, like sitting in a chair in a cinema watching the film going on. When we go to a cinema and watch a film, we may be emotionally participating in the film, but we are not actually participating. We're not doing anything. We're not taking part in any of the activities. But our present life is, though Bhagavan sometimes compared it to a projection on a cinema screen, or that we are experiencing, it is, he also compared it to a dream. And in a dream, not only are we experiencing the dream, which is unfolding according to Prarabdha, we're also participating in it. So there's certain actions that need to be done by our mind, speech, and body in order for our Prarabdha to unfold. Those actions he will make us do. That doesn't mean that all the actions of our mind, speech, and body are driven by him, but those that need to happen, those that ought to happen, he makes them happen. This is what he says in the first sentence of the note he wrote for his mother. Avarava prarabdha prakaram. According to the prarabdha of each person, avarava means them, but it implies of each person. According to the prarabdha of each person, Adakarnavan means he who is for that. That's referring to this Parameshwara Shakti, which is what we call Bhagavan. He who is for that, Angangirandu, being there. That means being in each place, implying being in the heart of each jiva, each one of us. Artavipan, he causes to dance. So that is whatever actions need to be done by our mind, speech, or body, in accordance with our prarabdha, he will make them do. In addition to those actions, because our actions are not only being driven by, the actions of our mind, speech, and body are not only being driven by his will, but also by our will. That is, as soon as we allow our attention to move away from ourselves, that is the very allowing of our attention to move away from ourselves is under the sway of Vishaya Vasanas. So, so long as we are tending to anything other than ourselves, we are to a greater or lesser extent acting under the sway of our vasanas. So those actions that we do under the sway of our vasanas, those are not actions he is making us do. That is actions our will is making us do. So those are called agamya. So both our will and his will, both are driving the mind, speech, and body. But whatever ought to happen or whatever needs to happen, he is driving it. So if we surrender our mind, speech, and body to him by clinging firmly to self-attentiveness, he will make them do whatever they need to do in order for the prarabdha to unfold. So taking care of our own bodily needs, taking care of our family, taking care of our work, or whatever other responsibilities we may need to have, we can leave that to him. If our mind, speech, and body are destined to fulfill these responsibilities that we think we have, he will make them do. So we need not be concerned about that. So this is the first sentence, the first clause of this sentence. Sakala Karangalayam or Parameshwara Shakti Naditi Kondirka Padiyal. Since one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, some of the subtleties in Tamil are very difficult to translate into English. For instance, Nadati Kondirika Padiyal, he's not just saying, he's saying something more subtle than just he's driving all karyas. Padiyal means I can't express it in English. I can't express it in English, but it's very subtle, though, the way the Bhagavan's choice of words and the way he forms words in Tamil. With Tamil, words tend to be long compounds, so every element is significant. So though I can feel the significance of that paddy there, that padiyal, it's very difficult to convey it in English. It's in such a way that, for instance, when in the first verse of the first Mangalam verse of Uludinapti, when Bhagavan says, being as it is, or being as you are, alone is meditating on it. The term he uses there is ullapadi. Padi in this context means in such a way, ullavaru. So it's in such a way, but it's very difficult to adequately translate it into English. Since in such a way the Parameshwara Shakti is driving all kariyas, that doesn't quite catch it. It's not possible to catch it in English. Anyway, I just say that because Bhagavan's the wordings of Bhagavan's teaching, when Bhagavan writes himself, his writing is so carefully worded, and every element of each compound word has a significance, but we can't always convey that significance in English, or even adequately explain it. It has to be felt more than understood. It's just the flavor of that term. I can't say I fully understand it, but I can feel a little bit the implication of that. Then in the next clause he says, Namum adaku adangi ramo. That means instead of we also yielding to it. So that that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving everything. So why shouldn't we just yield ourselves to that? But instead of we also yielding ourselves to that, everything else is being driven by him. Can't he drive us also? It's the implication by we also. He says now there means even or also. So instead of we also yielding to it, and then the main clause is Ipidi seya vendum, apidi seya vendum, endru sada chintipudu ain. That means why to be perpetually thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that. The implication of this is we can leave the entire burden to him. Whatever actions we need to do by mind, speech, or body, let him make us do, because he's driving all kariyas anyway. He's going to anyway make our mind, speech, and body do what they're meant to do. He can make them act in accordance with prarabdha. So why should we be thinking, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that? I isn't here in this sense. He says, Ipidi seya vendum, apidi seya vendum. Ipidi means in such a way, apidi means in this way, apidi means in that way. So it's necessary to do in this way, it's necessary to do in that way. Bhagavan says, it's why should we be perpetually thinking that? Leave that burden to him. What should be done and how it should be done. He knows how to make those things happen. He's anyway going to make everything happen as it's meant to happen. So why should we be concerning ourselves? Why should we be unnecessarily thinking that this is necessary, or that is necessary? Leave the entire burden to him. He will take care of it. So Bhagavan is giving us such a great assurance in this paragraph. He's saying we can leave the entire burden, even the burden of thinking, we can leave that burden to him. But anyway, he's carrying that burden. Whatever we do, whatever we think, whatever we try, we're not going to change things. That is what is going to happen as it's meant to happen. Because he is driving all these kariyas. Whatever needs to happen or ought to happen or needs to be done or ought to be done, he is making it happen. So we can just surrender ourselves completely to him, let him take care of everything. So we need not take care of our body. We need not worry about where our next meal is coming from or what medicine we should take when ailments come, or we need not think about if supposing an illness comes to us, Okay, illness comes according to prarabdha, medicine will come according to prarabdha. Or if no medicine comes, then that is also according to prarabdha. So like that with all our needs. And so also with, we feel, okay, I don't care about myself, but I have so many responsibilities. I've got my family, I've got this person depends on me, that person depends on me. Nobody depends on us. We are all equally depending only on Bhagavan. If he wants to help someone else through us, he will use our mind, speech, and body in whatever way he sees fit. So we can surrender we can surrender everything to him. Surrender the mind, the speech, and the body. We surrender all these to him. He will make them do whatever they're meant to do. Even if we don't surrender, he will still make them do whatever they're meant to do, but we will be unnecessarily suffering by thinking, I have to do this, I have to do that. So Bhagavan is admonishing us here. You need not think of anything. The only thing we need to think about, that is Atma, ourself. That's why he begins this paragraph with the very important words, Atma Chintana Tavira, accept Atma Chintana, accept self-attentiveness, we need not think about anything other than ourselves. Thinking about ourselves means being self-attentive. We need not attend to anything other than ourselves. That's all Bhagavan asks us to do. Because if we attend to ourselves, we thereby give no room to rising of any other thoughts. We bring about the subsidence of ego, because that's why he says it's giving ourselves to God. So Bhagavan is if we understand this one paragraph alone, that is all of Bhagavan's teachings are included in this one paragraph. Everything rises only because we allow our attention away from ourselves. If we cling firmly to self-attentiveness, no other thought can rise. And if no thoughts rise, nothing will rise. So we can leave the entire burden to him. There's so much depth of meaning in what Bhagavan is saying in this paragraph. So this whole third sentence, I'll read the whole sentence and the meaning again. Sakala Karyangalayam, or Parameshwara Shakti, Nadati Kondiraka Padiyal, Namum Adaku Adangi Ramal, Ipidisaya Vendum, Apidisaya Vendum, Indru Sada Chintapadain. Since one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, instead of we also yielding to it, why do we perpetually thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? Obviously, Bhagavan's asking a question here. Why to be doing that? It's a rhetorical question. The obvious answer is it's not necessary. We need not think anything. We can leave thinking it entirely to him. And we can leave all our actions, body, speech, mind, all leave entirely to him, because he can drive our mind, speech, and body much better than we can, and he can make them do what they're meant to do. And he will anyway make them do what they're meant to do, whether we like it or not. So better to just yield them to him and not interfere. That is the implication. And then to illustrate what he says in this third sentence, he gives us a very beautiful, very simple and very beautiful analogy in the final sentence of this paragraph. This is an analogy I think we're all familiar with, because this is such an important analogy Bhagavan has given us. He says, Puhe Vandi Sakala Barangalayum Tangi Kondu Povadu Terindum. That means, though we know that the train is going bearing all the burdens. That is, whatever is on the train is being carried by the train. Adil eri kondu pohum nam. We who are going in it, who have adil eri kondu pohum. We who have risen, that eri means we got onto a train and we're going in the train. We who boarded and are going on the train, why should we, we who are traveling, we can take it, we who are traveling in it, eri kondu, we can take as traveling. We who are traveling in it, namudaya siriye mutei eum adil pottuvitu summa iramal. Instead of being sukamai, be happily, or being happily leaving our little luggage, our little little bag on the train. So instead of being happily leaving our little luggage on our train, ade namadu talayil tangi kondu ein kashta padavendam. Why should we suffer carrying it on our head? In other words, when we're traveling on a train, we have two options. We brought our luggage, and we're very particular that our luggage should reach its destination. So if we're really worried about our luggage, and if we think it all depends upon us, we can spend all 5 hours or whatever sitting on the train with our luggage on our head. But if we do so, we're going to suffer unnecessarily. Instead of carrying it on our head, why don't we just put it aside, and then we can travel comfortably? That is, he uses two contrasting words here. When he talks about leaving the burden on the train, he says sukamai iramal. That is, instead of well, iramal means not being, or instead of being sukamai. Instead of being, sukam means happy or comfortable, or happy, we can take it as an adverb, happily. Instead of happily remaining, leaving the luggage on the train, why should we suffer carrying it on our head? So if we leave it on the train, we'll be happy, sukamai. If we carry it on our head, kashtapada, that is, why should we are unnecessarily suffering by carrying it on our head? So just like this, just like if we are wise, we will not carry our luggage on our head. We will put it on the train and travel happily. Likewise, we should leave all our burden to Bhagavan, because he is that one Parameshwara Shakti that is driving all carriers, that is carrying all burdens. So why should we suffer? That's why Bhagavan says in the first line of that verse 9 of Arunachal Patikam, he describes himself as Paramanimpadum Patrarapatrum Paravari Variaril Paraman. I am supreme among those who are destitute of the supreme wisdom to cling without attachment to your feet. So any passenger on the train who is carrying his burden on his head, they are destitute of wisdom, because their luggage is going to get to a destination, whether they carry it on their head or put it aside. So that's what Bhagavan means here. Of course, when Bhagavan says he is supreme, he is talking on our behalf. Bhagavan he is actually supreme in having clung. He is supreme because he clung without attachments to the feet of Arunachala. When the fear of death came to him, he turned his attention within. That is clinging to the feet of Arunachala. And so he remains ever without attachment. That is, he remains as Arunachala. But we are still so foolish that we continue to carry our luggage on our head. We continue to be destitute of the supreme wisdom, to cling without attachment to his feet. So all these, Bhagavan's teachings are all so beautifully connected. What he's writing about in Nanya, he's writing about the same thing in Arunachal Stuti Panchakam. All Bhagavan's teachings, if we understand them as a whole, that is, we can view Bhagavan's teachings as having two sides. The bhakti side he expresses in Arunachal Stuti Panchakam. The jnana side he expresses in Nana and Upadeshundya and Ulidunaptu and such works. We can view it in that way, but that's a rather superficial way of viewing it. We look deeply at the content of any of these works, whether it's Stuti Panchakam or Ulidunaptu or whatever it is, they're all talking about the same thing. So it's just different perspectives on the same subject. So what he's talking about in Arunachal Stuti Panchakam is exactly the same that he's talking about in Uludu Napadu, for example. And one thing I often like to point out, what does Bhagavan say in the final verse of Uludu Napadu? Well, Bhagavan finally, in the final verse, he says, what is moksha? What is mukti? Mukti is nothing but destruction of ego. So that is the point where Uludu Napadu ends with destruction of ego. And that is the point from which he begins Arunachaksharamai, because in the very first verse of Arunachaksharamai, he says, Arunachala, you eradicate the ego of those who think of you in the heart as I. Well, we can, there's a word there, ahame. Ahame can mean either as I, that is, we thinking of Arunachala, that which is shining in our heart as I, as Bhagavan made clear. So, we can take it that he's referring there to being self-attentive. You eradicate the egos of those who attend to you in the heart as I. We can also, ahame can also mean in the heart. So we can take it in both ways. We can take ahame as meaning in the heart. If we're thinking in the heart, that means deep inside ourselves. Deep inside ourselves, we're not thinking about a name or form. We're thinking only about ourselves. So Bhagavan begins Aksharamai talking about what is the means to eradicate ego? Only by thinking deeply about Arunachala. And Arunachala is that which is shining in our heart as I. So where he ends Uludu Napadu, talking about the annihilation of ego, that is our goal. How do we reach that goal? Only by clinging to Arunachala in the heart as I. So there is no difference at all. I mean, that is in substance, what Bhagavan is teaching us in Arunachala Stuti Panchakam and what he's teaching us in Upadesha Numalai, that's Upadesha Uludu Napadu, Ekama Panchakam, Anma Vide, and also in Nana, what he's teaching us in these works is exactly the same that he's teaching us in Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, but just different. He's presenting the same thing in different ways. But just like in this paragraph, in the first sentence of this paragraph, he makes it very clear that though he often used to say there are only two ways, either investigate yourself or surrender yourself, he makes it very clear that though he sometimes presented them as if they're two ways, that's because why he said it like that, as if it's two ways, because some people are more attracted to the idea of surrender. Some people are more attracted to the idea of investigation. You can have either the coin with the head on it or the coin with the tail on it. The choice is yours. It's the same coin. So Bhagavan makes very clear in this first sentence that actually self-investigation is itself self-surrender. As he says in verse 26 of Uludu Napadu, ahande undayin anetum undahum. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Ahande indrel indru anatum. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ahande yavamam. Ego itself is everything. Adalal, therefore, yadu idu endru nadale ovadal yavamenor. Therefore, investigating what this is giving up everything. Why is it giving up everything? Because to the extent to which we investigate ego, it will subside. To the extent to which ego subsides, everything else will subside, because everything else depends upon ego. So if we want to give up everything, if we want to surrender completely, the only way is to investigate who am I, and to investigate what we are. By investigating ourselves, we are thereby giving ourselves to God. So we superficially we can say, oh, Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, that's all about surrender. These works are all about vichara, but vichara and surrender are one and the same thing. And there's so many, there's so much bhakti implied in Bhagavan's Upadesha works, and so much Upadesha implied in Bhagavan's bhakti works, so they're really, really inseparable. As we can see by when we read verse 9 of of Arunachapatikam, along with this paragraph, we can see how Bhagavan's teachings are all, how coherent they are and how they're seamlessly one. There's really no distinction between them. They're just different aspects of the same thing. That's why Bhagavan often used to say, Bhakti is the mother of jnana, because without love, we are never going to surrender ourselves. And since we won't surrender ourselves without love, we won't investigate ourselves without love, because investigating ourselves entails surrendering ourselves. We can, to the extent to which we investigate ourselves, we are thereby surrendering ourselves. So if we're not willing to surrender ourselves, we won't be willing to investigate ourselves. We'll be finding some excuse or other. Oh no, my thoughts keep on rising and I can't attend to myself. We're just unwilling to do so. Let's be honest with ourselves. If we're really honest with ourselves, we are unwilling. We still have so much attachment to things other than ourselves. But if we think deeply about what Bhagavan has taught us, we recognize the supreme folly of attaching ourselves to anything other than him. If we are wise, if we have that supreme wisdom to cling without attachment to his feet, we will be free of all burdens. But if we cling to other things, we are carrying the burden on our head and suffering unnecessarily. So what Bhagavan teaches us here in this 13th paragraph, this is the very heart of his teachings. If we understand this, we will understand what is surrender and what is vichara. That is, without surrender, we cannot investigate ourselves. And without investigating ourselves, we cannot surrender ourselves. The two are one and the same. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya.